This is the Sonic Truth Dynasty podcast with Theo Gremminger and Jax Falcone from the Undroppables. Off we go, guys. I'm happy to be back. It's been multiple weeks since I've podcasted. This is the first time in years I've gone multiple weeks without podcasting, and I'm so ready for this. Like, I was itching, like my skin, just scratching. I gotta get in front of this microphone.
That may be something other than.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Might want to get that checked out, Matt. Get it checked out.
Dude, people are doing all these dynasty mocks and dynasty rankings updates and talking rookies, and I'm like, I'm feeling just intense jealousy. The Dynasty Warzone going live multiple times, and I'm on the sidelines watching Memphis kill it. He does so good on that show. I want to be on that show. I'm going to try to get on the Dynasty Warzone show and see if Memphis will have me on. In the meantime, we've been treated to a full college football season. Congratulations to Ohio State. Rookie picks. Is this a good year to have a rookie pick or a bad year to have a rookie pick? What are you giving up for rookie picks? Are you shopping for rookie picks? Are you trading rookie picks? Are you acquiring rookie picks? What are you doing with rookie picks, guys?
I want all the rookie picks I can get, and I'm interested to hear what Jax has to say about this, but I don't think people understand the value of their second-round picks. They never do. There's like a lot of times second-round picks, Matt, we've talked about this, how valuable they are to have. Whether it's to make that next deal or to actually use them. But I think this year, the second round pick is going to be super valuable because of the quality and depth at the running back class. There's going to be a lot of guys where they're going to slip into the second round. They're going to be guys that have value right away. And I'm really into it. I also think that we've talked about the depth of the tight end class. I think a few of those guys are going to land well. And naturally, some of them will slide into the second round as well. So I'm into getting rookie picks. I don't think people quite understand what they're worth. I think people understand what the 101 is worth. Ashton and Jeanty, people know what that is worth. But I think everything else will gain value as we get a little bit closer to the process. What about you, Jax?
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not so sure the class is as good as last year's class, though. Although the running, it's a different position. I think, what is it? 2025 running back is 2024 wide receiver. To some degree, right? In other words, we don't have the wide receiver class that we had last year, obviously. I mean, so, and we don't have the quarterback class. So it's interesting. It's every year is a little bit different. I think it'll be an okay class, not a tremendous class. Last year we did a redraft of the 2024 class, and Rome Odunze went 2.01. I don't think you're getting Rome Odunze at the 2.01 in this year's class, but
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and certainly quarterback elevated like last year's class. It was a position we were really excited about kind of going in, and I think we're actually even more excited about it right now with the hits with guys like Bo Nix, Jayden Daniels being a surefire top three. Yeah, so it's. Right. We don't have that at the quarterback position with this class. So I think with just how prevalent Superflex leagues are in Dynasty, I think that's sort of bringing down this class. But I don't know. The running back class is just sick. It's just super deep. Yeah. A lot of guys can handle volume. I had Cody Carpentier, Matt, on Dynasty Life, and we talked about it a lot. But it also just all these running backs, Jax, these guys are like 220. They're all like 210, 220. It's a throwback class. It's backs that can handle volume. Anybody watch the Ohio State game? Like Quinshon Judkins was incredible. He had 3 touchdowns, broke off a 70-yard run, and he might be running back 4, running back 5 at the end of the day when we're through at the NFL draft. He's a guy you could plug right away, and you could see him stepping right into an NFL offense as the primary lead back and being a top 40 pick. And he might be like the 4th or 5th running back for fantasy purposes. So I think this draft class is exceptional. I think that the wide receiver position will have a little bit more oomph after Mobile. I think a couple of these wide receivers, just like they do every year, are going to go to the Senior Bowl, start getting a little bit of hype, a little bit of buzz. We talked in the pre-show, and I know Matt's going to talk about Ladd McConkey, but like the ascension with Ladd started in Mobile. There's a number of interesting wide receivers that are going to be there. I think people are really excited about the wide receiver 1 in the class, and then there's a little bit of question marks about some of the guys behind him. But I think that the wide receiver class will gain value. The tight end class will gain value. The running back class already has value. And then sort of the quarterback class is where it's at.
Yeah.
Yes and yes. And no. No. Jax is wrong. And this is a rhetorical trick that I'm offended by, really. This idea that you're going to redraft last year's class and then compare it to this class that has no NFL experience. So you get to see all these guys breaking out of nowhere, which this draft class doesn't have the luxury of a Bucky Irving breakout to prop guys up into the first round and push down and offset picks so that Odunze falls to the 201. Of course, you're not going to get it. It's apples and oranges, man. Of course, you're not factoring in all the players from this class that are going to rise, not just throughout the process, but then during their rookie year. And then, yes, there's going to be a wide receiver or a running back with great draft capital who's a great talent like a Rome Odunze that ends up not producing for one reason or another that's not his fault. And then he will inevitably be a value the following year. Rome Odunze is an incredible value, but you can't look at Rome Odunze's redrafted capital now and compare that class 1-for-1 to the current rookie class. It's a huge disadvantage that this current rookie class is under, especially at the wide receiver position. We have Tet McMillan, right? We had 2 receivers that really helped fantasy league teams last year, right? It was first and foremost Malik Neighbors, and then secondly, Ladd McConkey. And then you had Marvin Harrison Jr. putting up like 11.5 fantasy points per game. You had Xavier Worthy not contributing.
And Matt Brian Thomas.
You're forgetting someone.
Did I forget Brian Thomas?
You sure did. Wide receiver 6.
Okay, let's reset. That's not true.
We'll edit it out. It's not live. It's not
live.
What
I said was this is live.
No, it's not.
What?
This is live. I can't believe I forgot Brian Thomas. What a dolt. Say I'm rusty. Right? Okay, so we had 3 receivers last year that actually produced for fantasy in a big way, right? So you had Neighbors, of course, was a huge difference maker. Brian Thomas from the same school. And then you had Ladd McConkey. Marvin Harrison Jr., 11.5 fantasy points, not helping anybody. Oh, week 2, he had week 2. He was the number 1 wide receiver in week 2, and then he didn't have a top 12 week after that. We'll talk more about Marvin Harrison Jr. later in the show. Okay? But so that's 3 guys. And one of them rose up during the process, primarily, Ladd McConkey, starting at the Senior Bowl, like you said. And there's going to be that guy. So there's going to be 3 receivers from this class that produce big numbers. One of them, at least one of them, will put up, say, Brian Thomas level numbers. I think it's going to be Tet McMillan. It could be somebody else. But somebody's going to do that. So all we're missing from this class, really, is Malik Neighbors. That's my larger point. My larger point stands, right? We're missing a Malik Neighbors from this class. He could be, maybe Tet McMillan is that, but that's too high of a bar. Really, I would set the upside at Brian Thomas. I think that's fair. But the running back class is on another planet from last year's running back class. So in that way, I feel like this class has more potential. It doesn't have a Brock Bowers, but there's multiple tight ends that could actually help your fantasy team as opposed to just having Brock Bowers. The quarterbacks, right, in single quarterback leagues, it's not, the quarterback isn't the thing that's going to like make or break a class. In Superflex, though, I'll give you that. Single quarterback, I prefer this class. Superflex, I prefer 2024.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes down to the wide receiver class, like a lot of times, I actually think that there's a little bit of game theory with embracing some of these guys that are going to end up with the decent draft capital and embracing some of these profiles. Wide receiver, a lot of times it's been guys that were slightly underrated have made big impacts for us in redraft and certainly early dynasty. And it's just more and more often that we're seeing these guys hit. It's now been 4 out of the last 5 years where we've had a top 6 wide receiver that's a rookie. And I think it's sort of going to be this is going to be the class where they don't do it type mentality. And there's not necessarily a top 6 scorer, but I think when if we were doing this a year from now, we're going to be talking about more wide receivers than Tet McMillan, and he would be my bet to be the most productive out of this class. But I'll also add a little bit to what you said, Matt. Like, there's other guys from last year's class, like Xavier Worthy, that was maybe a little bit more backloaded in his production. Jalen McMillan certainly in his backloaded production. So it was just a deep, really, really good class. But the success of the 2024 class doesn't somehow delude what we have coming up in 2025. I'm really excited about it, and I do think people are going to be more excited about it in like a month.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jax, do you have Tet McMillan number one?
Sure, but you said that Tet McMillan. You said that Tet McMillan's ceiling was Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas Jr.'s ceiling wasn't even Brian Thomas Jr.'s ceiling. Did I say that right? But I mean, here's the thing: he had put up the number 4 rookie season of all time. Randy Moss, Jamar Chase, Odell Beckham, Brian Thomas Jr. actually eked out Puka Nakua's rookie season. So you're talking about getting Brian Thomas Jr. alongside Neighbors and Ladd. There's 0% chance that you're going to get that type of 0.1% chance that you're going to get that type of production from this incoming class. I would say Tet McMillan, sure, he's great, and he's my wide receiver 1, but then there's some question marks after that. I think Emeka Ekbuka is, pretty solid. Luther Burden, I'm excited, but I don't know what to think. We'll have to see what the process says. The running backs are dope, but here's the thing. What if one of these running backs it lands like Charbonnet, right? We were excited about certain backs. These backs can land in a situation that don't necessarily give them rookie year production. Whereas, when CeeDee Lamb landed in a crowded wide receiver room in Dallas, he still made his way. Wide receivers can make their own sort of space because targets are earned, but playing time at the running back position can be fickle. We had Trey Benson, we had Blake Corum, we had a lot of backs that we liked. Certainly didn't think that they were alpha predators, but they were pretty good little backs, and none of them played or produced for us in 2024. And with a running back heavy class and no quarterbacks, that's the danger of the class. It's not quite as good as last year's, and I will sort of die on that hill, even though the running backs last year were not so good.
Well, Jax, I'll push back on that. I'll say that I agree with you, and actually I wrote about this in my first mock draft. Like, they don't always land as cleanly as you'd like. Like, there's a chance that Marion Hampton lands in a committee and we're all like devastated by that. Right. But I do think that there is a very good chance that there is going to be a lot more Bucky Irving, Tyrone Tracy type situations out of this class because of the depth and quality of it. Like, when I'm starting to look at the running backs, and I like, we have some cool stuff coming out, not just podcast wise, but Matt and I, we've really been hitting the Dynasty rankings, doing a lot of updates there. But we have some cool articles, some cool podcasts coming out, really just examining the class and trying to do tiers. Like, it's like objectively one of the most difficult years to rank the running backs, because once you get past running back like 6, try ranking running back 6 through 15. Like, I look at a guy. Impossible. Okay, so I'll throw this out there. Like, Damian Martinez, who I think we'll know a lot more about after the Senior Bowl, is awesome. And this is a guy where are you ranking Damian Martinez? I'm just curious, Jax.
I actually don't even know. I literally, you're right. Like, I think I have RJ Harvey at RB6 and Devin Neal at RB7. But it's funny because after the draft or whatever, these guys could be RB15 and 16 or something. There's a very, very flat tier, which is what makes this class so great. But at the same time, some of these guys will land just, Will Shipley or whatever. I mean, there's so many backs every year. So when there's depth of backs, sometimes when that's what you're hanging your hat on for a class, I think the class could disappoint. The tight ends are fine. They also generally don't produce in year 1. I do like the tight ends, but, Harold Fannin isn't a lock to get on the field in year 1. I mean, he's a special talent, and I am praying that he does get on the field in year 1. But that's not a lock at the tight end position, especially at his size. I mean, there's just a lot of questions. So, we've seen Tyler Warren, Michael Mayer. Remember that? He was supposed to be awesome. What happened to Michael Mayer?
Who?
There's always these guys that come out and disappoint as high-end prospects. And, the one thing that you can generally bank on is players like Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jayden Daniels. And then to get Penix and Bo Nix, who's now a top 12 dynasty quarterback out of that class, there is 0% chance you're going to get that type of production from the quarterback position in this class. You get the wide receivers that are better. Yeah, the running backs will be better. The tight ends won't be, because Bowers is, literally legendary. So it's not the same class. That doesn't mean I don't like the class. It doesn't mean also, to your first question, that I'm not interested in picks, because picks right now are cheaper than they will be on the clock.
And let me push back on one thing. You mentioned the tight end position, and I agree. This is not a Brock Bowers in this class, but I do think, Matt and Jax, one of the things we've seen, one of the biggest changes, certainly from the time you started doing Sonic Truth, and even from the time you started doing the undrafted, Jax, is the NFL teams sort of embracing the younger tight end and using this player right away. Like what we've seen the last 2 years is a total change in the guard here. Sam Laporta and Brock Bowers back-to-back tight end ones overall. Kincaid was a guy that was really a big bust this year in terms of what he cost, but as a rookie had, was it 80 receptions as a rookie, something like that. And then this past season, you had two tight ends, one in year one and one in year three, with the third and the fourth most receptions all time at the position. So for me, I think NFL teams are looking at this draft class of tight ends. It's certainly one of the stronger positions in the draft, and they're saying to themselves, "I'm going to use this guy right away if I draft him." There's no more waiting game, and I think you're going to see more situations where teams are willing to use these sort of tight ends instantly, where we're not having to necessarily wait. So, like you bring up Harold Fannin Jr., what if he lands well? And all of a sudden, you're looking at Harold Fannin Jr. as the 35th overall pick, and a guy who last year had 150 targets in college. And I sent Matt his highlight tape the other day, and I'm like, we got to dive in a little on Fannin Jr.
This guy's amazing. He could be the next Gerald Everett.
Oh, come on, Matt, killing me with that. You're absolutely killing me with that one. And then, but I just think like the guy like Warren Loveland. There's more like we're going to see Gunnar Helm at the Senior Bowl. We're going to see Mason Taylor. There's all these guys in this class that have this sort of prototypical size. They're going to have the draft capital, and nowadays NFL teams are going to be more likely to use them instantly. And you have more dynasty leagues that are tight end premium. So it's sort of a perfect storm for NFL and for dynasty managers to kind of embrace this class a little bit more.
I don't agree anymore. I can't believe it. I wanted to come out so strong. I wanted to find a reason to disagree with Jax. After the last show, I got buried. I had to apologize and admit that I was wrong and admit that I lost an argument, and it was just embarrassing. And I'm like, no, I got him. He's talking about Rome Odunze, and that's not fair. But Theo, here's the thing. Bowers is Bowers. No one is going to overtake Bowers for the next 10 years. Unless Bowers gets injured. If he's healthy, he's going to be the tight end one. And that has so much value when you're grading a class because of all these Kyle Pitts that we've had to live through. And think about the wide receivers. Our Dynasty rankings on PlayerProfiler.com. Subscribe. Use code PODFATHER. You get $25 off the all-in package. Do it. Do it now. The top 5 players in single quarterback Dynasty leagues are all receivers. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors, before you get to the first running back. Okay? If you can find gold at running back, that's one thing. If you can find it at receiver, that is the most precious of all of the minerals that you could be mining out there. So the fact that you had three guys that were top 15 in all of fantasy football at the wide receiver position.
Plus Marvin Harrison Jr.
Who was top 15 in air yards. He was top 10 in air yard share. It's just the targets. His targets were, in particular, not accurate compared to most targets to most receivers around the league. and incredibly well defended. So he ran into a bunch of alpha corners, and he and Kyler Murray were not on the same page. That's something that can easily change with a better scheme, more motion, and just a better connection in the offseason, developing rapport with
and
Kyler
get back
Murray.
to your point of the value of having quarterback and wide receiver being the prescient minerals, as you point out, that are and an elite tight end, which you're almost completely unlikely to get in any particular class, despite how good we feel about it at any point in the class. We still think Kyle Pitts he's coming, man. It's going to happen. Dalton Kincaid's going to happen. Michael Mayer. I mean, you can have all these great
first
prospects.
Of all, you can't just keep listing. One of those guys is going to happen.
Maybe, but I'm saying Bowers did happen.
They will. I mean, the tight ends break out late all the time. One of those guys is going to happen.
But I'm just saying Bowers is already there. So to compare it to last year's class, it's impossible. You already have the best tight end, the best wide receiver.
There are too many birds in the hand at wide receiver and tight end and quarterback for any number of running backs in this class to offset.
Right.
Because running back gives you production for the fewest number of years.
Correct.
Right? The age apex for the running back position is like 24.7 years old. That's their midpoint of their career for fantasy point production. It's crazy, but it's true. Is 24.7 years old. Whereas tight end, it's like 27.4. And wide receiver, it's like 27.2. And with quarterback, it's like 29.6. So it's just it's more microwaved, fleeting production from the running back position, though in year one, what it could be true that the running backs produce so much in year one that they by themselves just blot out the sun with fantasy points and completely dwarf what Bucky Irving and Tyrone Tracy were able to put up this past year. That, as rookies, this class has excellent production. But for Dynasty, when you're looking at a Dynasty valuation, the lifetime value of these players in the Dynasty rankings, you can see Malik Neighbors at 296.74 lifetime value points on Player Profiler. And then right below him is Brian Thomas. And then right below him is Ladd McConkey. And right there is Brock Bowers. You've got 4 position players in the top 15. And you have Devon Achane, you've got Bijan Robinson, and Jahmyr Gibbs, and Ashton Jeanty. Those are the only running backs in our top 15.
Yeah. I mean, running back, we look at it as a shorter window, but it doesn't mean that these younger running backs don't gain exceptional value, even from where they're selected. So I also think when you look at this running back class, there is going to be guys drafted who can quickly break into RB1 rankings in into the top 12. So for me, guys, I will take a little bit more optimistic approach with this draft class, I think, than both of you guys, but it's fine. I do think that one thing that we've been taught is going into a draft class with sort of a preconceived notion about what it is going to be can sometimes get us in trouble. Obviously, we're not going to sit here telling you we can predict the next Puka Nacua, the next Amon-Ra St. Brown. Certainly those kind of situations happen. But for me, guys, I just look at it as we've been waiting for a running back class like this, Matt, where we have to go back 2 years where it was the Bijan Jahmyr Gibbs class. That class had the front-loaded talent. Certainly Devon Achane landed very well, and he sort of exceeded what the market was treating him like. Zach Charbonnet landed poorly. Per game basis, he's been very strong. But this class has just been, to me, it's just the depth, the size, the profiles. I think we could see a record-breaking number of backs drafted as well. So for me, the transformative nature of this running back class is something where I get it. It's a fleeting position where there's a little more risk to us as dynasty managers embracing it. But I think the potential rewards on some of these guys sort of outweigh that. So, yeah, I mean, 2024 class, exceptional. Absolutely exceptional. Do I think 2025 is going to reach that level? No, but I do think that this is going to end up being a class where you're going to be really happy you used your rookie picks, and I think it's going to be a class where you're going to be happy you have multiple rookie picks.
Wow, Jax comes in and sways both people. That's what I call an argument win right there. You came in down 2-0 or down 1-2 really, and then you sweep. You're up 3-0.
I didn't think this was good. I didn't think this class was better in 2024. 2024 is insane, guys. We've arguably
Wait, what?
We've argued, guys.
Hold on. What show are you on?
2024.
Are your earphones working? Do you know what you're saying?
Oh man, this is great.
What do you mean?
Rewind the tape.
Up for you.
Rewind the tape. Okay,
what
good.
And then, I bailed very quickly. I bailed very quickly. Well, the other thing is when I'm thinking through my strategy, I'm very much going back to the historic norm. I'm going to be working off the historic norm that running backs are the most fragile. They're the ones with the most volatile production year to year. And I'm banking on being able to get production from Blake Corum, Zach Charbonnet, Trey Benson, all these running backs, right, that are going to find them. I mean, Jerome Ford is currently teed up to be a starter unless Cleveland will probably draft a running back. So he's very, very, very vulnerable. But for now, right?
Here's another point
Jaylen
too.
Warren, there's Jaylen Warrens and Jerome Fords. There's just so many options out there that it's less tantalizing for me, the stud running back, than the stud receiver. To miss out, to not have the picks in the 2024 class, and to miss out on a McConkey, to miss out on a Brian Thomas, that is criminal. This year, if you miss out and you don't make those trades for these picks, I don't think it's going to be as problematic in the long run.
Correct. And so the other thing too is if you look back at the 2024 running back class or any running back class, we talk about Tracy and Irving. Look, if Trey Benson had gone to New York, do you think he'd have had a Tyrone Tracy year? Of course. Yeah. So the point of the matter is Tyrone Tracy now all of a sudden specifically better than Trey Benson? No, his situation was better than Trey Benson's for production. And so that's what's going to happen at the running back position. Again, I don't know. You could think of some sick, awful landing spots for these running backs, and there's a lot of them. And a couple of them are going to hit the awful, awful landing spot. And you're going to be like, dude, what the hell, man? What are we going to do with, Omarion Hampton now that he's, named the awful place? There are a lot of good spots too, though, I will say. But, but there's some bad spots. Just landing it, even in Cincinnati. Cincinnati's viewed as a good landing spot, but Chase Brown's done enough to carve out a role. He was dope this past year, and they leaned on him heavily. I can't imagine them just going away from him altogether. So, you can spin a tail, but so you might have to wait a little bit. You look back at JT, Nick Chubb, even a lot of the alphas that come out. You kind of have to wait for them in year one. They're not always there right away. We did this with Jonathan Brooks last year. We're like, second half, baby. And of course that never materialized. But the point of the matter is a lot of times we talk ourselves into waiting for these running backs, and sometimes it just never materializes for reasons that are beyond their control even.
Yeah. I mean, that all said, there are plenty of ways to exploit the rookie class. Every year, trading for picks right now, because as the events unfold, the Senior Bowl, the Combine, the Pro Days, the draft itself, players will gain value as they move up draft boards, as they land well, and these picks will accrue value. So you absolutely should be acquiring picks. I've seen some of the best Dynasty leaguers, they acquire picks now, and then they're trading picks at the end of April, and they're basically right back where they started with the number of picks, but in between they are actually able to add some talent to their roster because they're grinding the trade market. They're active in the chat. They're making deals happen, and that's the advantage you have as a hyperactive fantasy gamer. But there's other ways to profit. For example, this show is sponsored by FastDraft, and FastDraft is the newest best ball app. And there's going to be a rookie game. It's going to launch in the next week called Origins, where you can just draft 6 rookies and you put them in booster spots. And the nuts last year, the winning team drafted Daniels with Davis and Bucky Irving and Tyrone Tracy. And if you drafted that same team, but you just had Bucky Irving in one higher booster spot, you would have taken home the first place prize, right? The prize pool on that is going to be $10,000, and the code there is Podfather as well. Or actually, if you're listening to this show only, you can use code TRUTH to get a $25 deposit match. It's a 100% deposit match up to $25 when you download the FastDraft app. And while the Origins game is coming soon, the Flex 4 game, we just draft any 6 running backs, wide receivers, tight ends for the whole fantasy season. Those drafts take like 5 minutes. Ashton Jeanty, in the last draft that just happened on the Flex 4 game, Ashton Jeanty went at the 210, so he was player 20, which I think is incredible value, right? And Tet McMillan went in the 6th round. So whatever best ball format you're playing, whether it's FastDraft or something else, drafting and being heavily weighted to rookies when in the early contests that come out has been historically profitable. It just happened. It's just that this year we have a rookie specific game where you can just leverage your knowledge of rookies only and draft in a rookie only game. That's what's cool about FastDraft.
No, for sure. Embracing the unknown is always an edge in fantasy. Like the wait and see it first type drafter is usually a disadvantage, especially when there's big turnover at a high scoring position.
Oh! Silence in the chat asks, "Hey Podfather, what are you doing with Blake Corum next year?" Well, that's great because I actually had it on the show sheet. This was a question I had for these guys. I'm trying to get as much Blake Corum as possible. That's exactly the type of player. I know I talked to Theo, and he's doing the same with Zach Charbonnet. He's trying to get as much Zach Charbonnet as possible. So that is the alternative. The alternative is to get a super talented running back. Charbonnet's 220, athletic, can catch passes. Corum's a little bit lighter, but also had a year at Michigan with 25 catches, another year with like 20-plus touchdowns, another year with 1,600 rushing yards. So all Blake Corum does is put up numbers. And if Blake Corum were thrust into that primary back role in Los Angeles, he would put up huge Kyren Williams-like numbers. I don't think anyone disagrees with that, especially given that as a rookie, Kyren Williams didn't produce. Like, it's just another one of those rookies back through time that didn't really produce much. Jeanty probably will. Bijan did. Most of them don't. But Corum is a must stash in Dynasty. He's like a guy that I can't imagine leaving a startup without a guy like Blake Corum and having a bunch of those guys. Because if you're going to be investing in the wide receiver position early, which you should be, just going off the Dynasty Deluxe rankings, then that's predicated on, in the double-digit rounds, loading up on all these handcuff backs, young with great profiles on PlayerProfiler. So if my guy is Blake Corum, who that fits that profile is your guy Theo and your guy Jax?
Well, I think that it's the archetype for me, Matt. I don't want to be like pigeonholing into a specific guy. I did buy Trey Benson the other day in a league. I'm willing to rebuy Trey Benson because Arizona is deeply invested in a 30-year-old running back who has been injured in multiple seasons of his career and had very, very good injury luck this year. So for me, I'll buy Trey Benson at a considerably lower cost than I paid for him as a rookie. I did the same thing last offseason with Zach Charbonnet. I was able to get him in some leagues for like a third when he never was that cheap in rookie drafts. So I'll keep doing it. Blake Corum is an interesting one because Kyren had that stretch where he was fumbling, and we didn't see the Rams like embrace Corum. He never scored more than 5 points in a game this year. So there's a few things with Corum where I would have liked to have seen more, but I do agree with you in principle that getting Corum is a solid bet. I really think getting a lot of these guys at a reduced cost that what you paid a year before, when nothing really changed with them other than the fact that they didn't get an opportunity, is a good way of playing Dynasty. we love like for like replacements that don't cost us a lot and have the ability to handle volume when it's presented to them. I know a lot of teams that are built with like a zero RB type mentality in a startup end up kind of loading their rosters with this sort of a profile. And if you get 4 starts out of Blake Corum next year and he doesn't cost you anything, then that's a great player to have on your roster. Jax brought up Chase Brown. Chase Brown was a guy this year who took a massive leap forward. Certainly he flashed a little more than Corum did as a rookie in a smaller sample size. But I think that's the kind of thing you're hanging your hat on. So I don't specifically want to, like last year, I think it was Charbonnet. Obviously, if you can still pick up Charbonnet, I think that's a good one because he showed you what he can do on a per game basis. But I'm open to multiple profiles right now, including Benson. How about you, Jax?
Yeah, I agree. What about Jaylen Wright? I mean, I like Jaylen Wright a lot as a buy, but all these guys. I mean, I'm just looking to pick off, anybody looking to sell cheap or, because you're really, unless you're paying a really good price, I wouldn't go out and specifically be buying these guys like, hey man, what do you need for Corum or whatever? It's more just sort of picking up at the right options because, what we just did that aforementioned redraft for the 2024 class, and still Corum and Benson and Jaylen Wright were all mid to late second round picks in the 2024 redraft class. If you just draft it again, and so look, the running back class being really, really good in this year's draft, I think I'd rather have a shot in the mid-second with the 2025 running back class than maybe, retreading those other guys. But that remains to be seen how this 2025 class lands. But I think their value's fine. It's not like wow, they're buy low. But if you can buy these guys for thirds, jump all in.
Yeah.
3.4 fantasy points per game for Kyren Williams as a rookie. So as bad as
sure love him
Corum
now.
was, I mean, it's not like Kyren Williams was tapped in his first year as the next thing.
No, it's just hard to imagine him getting playing time with the Rams just love Kyren so much. It's hard to imagine them just sort of giving up on him and moving Corum in. I think Corum's a high-end handcuff, of course.
Yeah.
Benson maybe a little bit more there just because Connor's older and maybe more likely to break down, maybe more likely to even, lose a step potentially, in this year as he's hitting an age cliff. Who knows? I like Jaylen Wright a little bit because I think he might actually have some standalone value. If Jaylen Wright can get himself on the field, for me, he's ahead of those two guys. Only he has a lower floor potentially long-term, I guess, because they may not even like him. But if they do like him and he gets on the field, he could be that sort of Raheem Mostert touchdown vulture as well. So he could even play even if Etienne stays healthy. That's kind of the reason I like Jaylen Wright a little bit. That could end up being a bad take. I really don't know, but that's just my feeling at this particular time.
Don't say you don't know. That's a great take. Why are you backpedaling on Jaylen Wright? Jaylen Wright's explosive. The Etienne
that's where I'm at.
Is 190 pounds, and if they're gonna give him like a big workload, it is a ticking time bomb situation. It's just like Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams is a ticking time bomb, and the fuse just never went off. Right? But if you give a guy that's that small, that big of a workload, we saw with Christian McCaffrey and every other undersized running back, what happened to Austin Eckler? It was one big year, one big volume year, and he's been paying the price ever since. And I don't know what the price is going to be for Kyren. I don't know what the price is going to be for James Cook. I don't know what kind of price they're going to pay. But
Ray Davis, another one. There you go.
These small running backs always pay the price, and you could love it while they're there, while they're healthy, while they're explosive and they're healthy. Start them, love every minute of it. But make sure you have Ray Davis. Make sure you have Jaylen Wright. And all those guys, less expensive.
One high ankle sprain could change that, right? Yeah, could change it where Corum is now the lead back and Kyren's working his way back to get on the field. That's right. It can happen.
And you're not wrong. I mean, I'm not saying Blake Corum has standalone value with Kyren Williams. No, he needs an injury. But logically, we know from watching football for the last 50 years, collectively, the three of us, that it's going to happen. Right? It's going to, probably more actually than 50 years.
No more. It's true. 30 years, probably, 90 years. Jeez Louise.
Well, guys, I'll also add one more name that I think is interesting because we don't know who the head coach is going to be there yet, but a player that we've seen actually score and will be entering into year 3 and was also a day 2 pick, is Tank Bigsby. And we don't know who the Jacksonville head coach is going to be, but this could be one where Travis Etienne is kind of brushed aside or potentially moves on, and they embrace a guy with this sort of running ability. Bigsby was much more efficient than Travis Etienne as a runner. This is a guy, again, has the size and gave us multiple weeks with 20 points, gave us multiple 100-yard rushing performances, and I think just needs an offensive fit. And I would argue, Matt, that even though he performed better, you're going to have tons of dynasty managers who are looking at Bigsby as sort of a throwaway, whereas they sort of agree with us that getting a chance to get a discount on a Jaylen Wright, a discount on a Trey Benson, a discount on a Blake Corum, guys that were going highly in their rookie drafts 1 year ago, is more appealing to them than getting a guy who actually had some production this year. So for me, Bigsby is one that's very interesting just because of the ambiguity of the situation right now in Jacksonville. And I think over the next couple of days, if they do hire a guy like a Liam Cohen, where we're like, okay, they've got a guy who kind of gets it, and we want Jacksonville Jaguars now, I think Bigsby, the window will actually get a little bit more expensive with pretty much all of those Jaguars. So Bigsby's a guy which I wouldn't mind having a little bit of exposure to. And Jax, I actually traded away a couple of Bigsby shares in packages to kind of go for it this year. In multiple leagues, I, for whatever reason, had a lot of Bigsby, used him to get guys who were scoring right away in some sort of a package. I wish I had a share or two just in case the offseason plays out like I think it could.
Look at the round 2 draft picks up on the screen. Okay, we've got the Browns at 33, Giants at 34, Titans at 35, Jaguars at 36, Raiders at 37, Patriots at 38, Bears at 39, that's the Carolina pick, and Saints at 40. There's going to be some running backs drafted in here. Right? Think about the classes, the Saquon, Nick Chubb class that this class is being compared to. Where was Chubb and Sony Michel and Ronald Jones? Where were all of those running backs getting drafted? Right in this zone. So this is why I like Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford was really productive and efficient with his touches last year. And I like that he's like an all-purpose back. He can do it all. And Nick Chubb is his career is almost over. He's on the very end, and he probably won't be a Brown next year. But that pick, number 33, probably a running back. The Giants, are they all in on Tyrone Tracy? I don't know. I don't know how they feel about Tyrone Tracy. I don't know if they feel like they need to upgrade that running back room again. Probably not. That pick is probably safe. Spears and Pollard together, knowing that Pollard is there for another year, probably insulates even Spears from a running back at 35 to the Titans. And then you're looking at potentially running back to Jacksonville and Las Vegas. The Bears. I didn't mention Roschon Johnson because I'm fully expecting the Bears that have almost back-to-back picks here at 39 and 41. One of those is so going to be a running back. I mean, it's like, sorry, DeAndre Swift. Sorry, Roschon Johnson. That's going to be a running back. And the Saints, they're going to have a 30-year-old Kamara, and they actively despise Kendre Miller, so that's probably a running back. I mean, the Saints have so many other needs other than running back. There's no way they should be drafting running back there, but watch them do it.
Dallas at 44, Matt. Dallas at 44. If they don't take Jeanty in the first round, Dallas at 44 looks like almost a lock. I know a lot of people are projecting to use that one, but the Bears are not going to use those second-round picks on a running back because they're going to draft Ashton Jeanty at 10 overall.
That's another point.
I think it was
either way. The Bears, by the time pick 50 rolls around, the Bears will have a running back, one way or the other. But that's that sweet spot, like whatever it is. Pick 28 through 44. There could be 4 or 5 running backs drafted in that zone.
Yep. Yeah, I think it was Dane Brugler's mock had Travion Henderson to the Cowboys in round 2. Oh my God.
There you go.
That would be insane. I mean, like any of those big five end up in Dallas or they take Jeanty in the first round. People are standing on their heads. That's sort of, Matt and I have discussed Dallas drafting Jeanty for months and months and months. Now it looks, and if we just go back into the top 10 now, like there's a chance that if Pete Carroll gets the Vegas job, Pete Carroll's not coming there for some 5-year build, for some 3-year build. And this is a guy who embraces the running back position continually in his career. Don't you think he's going to be standing a little bit for just using that pick on Ashton Jeanty? Jacksonville has been mentioned as a team that could be a wild card for Jeanty. Certainly Chicago with Ben Johnson getting the job. And the Chicago offensive line issues, they could double tap offensive line in the second round, take Jeanty in the first round, and cover both bases there. And then, like we talked about, Dallas sort of seems like the bottom of the tier for where Jeanty could get drafted at. I've seen some people saying he falls to Denver, he falls to the Chargers. I just don't see it. Not in this draft class. Not in this draft where there's a lack of like tremendous franchise-changing talent at the top at any position. Jeanty's a guy where when your people are doing their overall rankings, and certainly we'll have ours up at Player Profiler shortly, just in terms of draft prospects, Jeanty's up there. So it's going to be a very, very fun draft to cover. Matt and I will be covering it once again. We'll be down in a location to be announced soon, but we're doing draft coverage again this year. And Matt, like, we're always getting like super, super hyped about the running back landing spots on day 2. I think this year we'll see Jeanty go in the first round, and I think we'll get another running back or two in the end of the first round, let alone the beginning of the second, just because of the quality of the class.
Well, yeah, you
agree.
I mean, at 21, you have the Steelers, who are going to be moving on from Najee Harris. So that's a prime landing spot for a running back. Then you have the Chargers at 23.
Bingo.
The Commanders at 26, they're going to be down to just Brian Robinson.
Yep.
So it's very possible. I don't think
I'll throw Minnesota.
Are they all in on Brian Robinson, the Commanders? And they don't have a lot of needs.
Minnesota's
at 28. I started at Minnesota. I was thinking, okay, 28 through 44, because I know Minnesota's in the market for a running back because Aaron Jones is on a 1-year deal.
Yep. And Akers. I mean, however good you thought Akers was, which he was pretty good, also a free agent.
And guys, if we look at what people like, last year was the wide receiver class. Last year was the year where we set records at the quarterback spot and the wide receiver spot in round 1. What happened at the end of round 1? The end of round 1, we saw San Francisco take Ricky Pearsall, and we saw Carolina trade into the bottom of first round to get Xavier Legette. This year, and Matt mentioned all of those teams that need running back at the beginning of the second round. Matt, you just know that we're going to be sitting there with pick 30, pick 31, where somebody's going to trade up, jump those teams, not have to worry about heading into day 2. They're just going to leap somebody, get their running back there. And I'll throw this out there, guys. Kansas City's a wild card at 31 with what they do with this draft class. Like anybody thinking Isaiah Pacheco is some long-term answer, he's just not. And Kansas City, we've seen this regime go running back years ago with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They're a smart franchise, Matt. They're a franchise who is in how many consecutive AFC title games is this? They've tied the Patriots record this year, guys. So this is a team where they're a wild card. They might just say, hey, last year we took Xavier Worthy end of the first round. This year, let's take Omari and Hampton at the end of the first round. Let's take Caleb Johnson end of the first round and see what happens.
And yet, even if a bunch of running backs go in the end of the first round, I still think last year's draft class it can't be surpassed. I think you could throw as much firepower from the running back position at the 2024 class, and you won't be able to surpass it.
Let me ask you guys a question. In a Superflex rookie draft with the 1.01, if you were drafting right now, you are taking who?
Superflex rookie draft with the 101?
This is a Jayden Daniels question.
Superflex startup right now.
No.
Oh, I thought it was a startup.
2025 rookie draft.
2025
rookie draft.
Okay. It's Ashton Jeanty. You're taking Ashton Jeanty at the 101. This sort of becomes the argument we had 2 years ago where Bijan was the 101, and then people made their arguments for Anthony Richardson when he got the draft capital, and there sort of was a 60-40 Bijan at the 101 after the Richardson selection. But this year, neither one of those quarterbacks has the rushing upside at the top. So for me, even if you get, Cam Ward at the 101, Shedeur Sanders at the 101, I'm still going Ashton Jeanty, because Ashton Jeanty is just such an insulated draft prospect. It's sort of the Bijan Robinson corollary where if Jeanty were to go down with an injury, miss the season, you could still re-roll him for a 2025 very early Superflex first-round pick and get your quarterbacks, 2026, and get a better draft, potentially better and deeper draft class of quarterbacks there. So I'm taking Jeanty at the 101 pretty much no matter what, Jax. I mean, I can't see a landing spot where I'm like, okay, I need to reassess my opinion on Jeanty. I think really, if Jeanty lands poorly, it's a get the hell out of that other player that he's attached to, then I need to adjust my expectations on Jeanty. Like, Jeanty could dust somebody that we're not expecting in the first round, but I'm taking him at the 101.
I see the Matt Kelly wheels turning is all I see. I see the Matt Kelly wheels just fucking turning, and I love it.
Well, I want to know what Jax thinks about this, because
yes, I knew it. I knew it.
The upside of a quarterback that hits in Superflex is just it's astronomical.
So
look where
Matt,
Jayden Daniels is right now. I'm not saying there's any Jayden Daniels in this class.
Right.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that is typically worth chasing in Superflex.
Okay, so check this out. So I have actually agreed with Theo's take here that it's Ashton Jeanty, and I'm like, okay, I agree. Like, he's the most certain elite sort of level player in this draft. There's no quarterback that you can really, get too excited about on a Jayden Daniels level. Even no prospect as good as Drake May or Caleb Williams in this draft class. So for those reasons, I think it's Jeanty number one. But if that's the case, doesn't that weaken the value of the 1.01 in this draft class? If it's a running back that we're talking about, because if you look at a Superflex, the full board startup, you're saying the running backs aren't even taken until the early second. You're looking at all the quarterbacks, you're looking at all the elite wide receivers, and then Bijan and Gibbs come off the board after that. And where does Etienne and Breece Hall go?
Are you saying
further down
that you would just as soon flip the 101 in 2025 for the 101 in 2026?
I would easily do that. Of course, if I knew I could get the 2026 1.01, I would flip it immediately right now, yes.
Well, this is also an interesting thing. One interesting thing you said was the ability to flip the 101 and get a quarterback that we know. I think that's the way. If quarterback is a position that you want to embrace, then trade the 101 and go get a quarterback. But I'm not going to take one of these guys over Jeanty in this draft class. And I'll say, Matt, the argument with going quarterback, 2 years ago, we had 3 quarterbacks go inside the top 4 picks overall. 2 of those guys we were very excited about. Me and you were excited about Richardson. We were excited about CJ Stroud, and we were fading Bryce Young. And Alan Soslowski was with us. And now if you go back and look at it, Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, if we're doing a startup draft tomorrow, where do those quarterbacks go in correlation with the 2 absolute stud top 12 NFL draft capital running backs? So another thing with Jeanty, guys, is the running backs that get selected inside of the top 12, and you can push it down to like the 15th overall pick. The guys that get that really premium NFL draft capital, they all give you multiple running back 1 seasons. A big exception people love to point at is Trent Richardson. That would be the exception. Very short-lived window. Even Trent, who was a universal bust, still gave you a top 10 scoring season at the running back spot. So I will say that that getting that sort of draft capital with a talent like Jeanty is something where I'm willing to invest in it. And I think if I'm looking to go make money in fantasy and looking to go win a dynasty league, he's a guy where a couple years from now, he's the potential 101 in redraft. He's a potential 20 to 25 point per game player that's something where I'm embracing. Let alone with all due respect to the value of the quarterback position in Superflex.
All due respect. All due respect.
With all due respect,
of course. With all due respect. Of course.
I wish someone would write a book about this.
All due
I wish
respect.
someone would write a book.
Yeah. Okay. So the parallels with there are some really good parallels with the 2023 class. In that right now, Gibbs and Bijan have a hell of a lot more lifetime value on the player profiler dynasty rankings than even CJ Stroud. Right? So they're like, so we got Gibbs and Bijan are rated at around 290 lifetime value. Stroud is 226. Would you rather have Bijan, Gibbs, or Stroud if you had to pick one of those three?
The two running backs ahead of CJ Stroud.
Now, throw in Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young. And the average quarterback lifetime value in that particular situation is like 100. So then it's like, you would need all three of them. If someone tried to trade you Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young and CJ Stroud for Jahmyr Gibbs in Superflex, would you take it?
3 starting quarterbacks for Jahmyr Gibbs in Superflex?
Yeah.
You'd have to think about it, but
You're
again,
thinking about it. That's the whole point.
3 for 1, I'm thinking about it.
The reason why it's Jeanty this year is because you're thinking about it. That's what we're talking about. You're fucking thinking about it. That's crazy. That's so crazy. It's been less than 2 years, man, and that's crazy.
Here's one for you guys. I had somebody try to trade for a 101. I actually bought an FFPC orphan off of Dynasty Depot, friend of the site. Dynasty Depot's they're definitely check them out if you're looking to get in. But I bought an appealing orphan with some rookie picks and a 101 included on there. And someone offered me a quarterback for the 101, and I turned it down. They offered me Bo Nix straight up for the 101. And I'm like, hey, keep your Bo Nix. I'm going to keep this 101.
Well, that's pretty close. When you look at our overall rankings, we have Jeanty and Nix very close. That's very close.
It's and the fact that I didn't decline it instantly was something where it's like, this. I want to find ways to get Bo Nix, and I think one thing Jax
Bijan for Nix further supports Jax's position that he'd rather have the 2026 pick.
Well, one thing I'll point out to Jax is one thing you said, Jax, was Drake May. This is a guy where we're sort of head over heels with his potential in an improved New England offense. He showed us a lot as a fantasy asset. Where would you your entry point to going and getting him using picks or using a combination of picks and players? Where are you talking about when you're looking at the 2025 class trying to get that entry point?
I'd happily pay the 101 for May.
So there you go. The 101, I think if you're in a quarterback bind, float it at the Drake May manager. And I don't think that that's every Drake May manager is turning you down for that, because I do think that there's so much value in Jeanty right now. But I would rather take my shot on going for that. I would rather take my shot on trying to find interesting ways to trade for Bo Nix than trying to make an argument to take Ward or Sanders because of their landing spot, because of their draft capital, potentially creating some late argument, post NFL draft argument to get off of Jeanty.
So here's the trade though, Theo. So you got offered Bo Nix for the 1.01. What about the counter of your 1.01 for Bo Nix, and he throws in like the 212, 208, or the 304, just like a couple of picks somewhere around the 2-3 turn. And then you get to draft Devin Neal and RJ Harvey and all your other backs who could just be the Bucky Irvings and the Tyrone Tracys, while so you get Nix plus 2 running backs that, I guess, Matt, here's what happened. I was listening to Ray Garvin on his show. I don't remember what show. There's so many damn shows out there, but he was talking about how basically he values Caleb and Omarion much closer to Jeanty than the market does right now, because nobody can envision where they go. But if like Jeanty goes somewhere in the top 15, that makes him a Gibbs level prospect. I get that. He's amazing. But if like Caleb Johnson goes late first to Minnesota and Omarion Hampton goes to Dallas in the second round, I don't know, I'm making stuff up here.
No, it's fine.
Are they really going to be that far behind Jeanty at that point?
No, not at all. How far behind?
They're going to be razor close.
Right? How far behind would Bucky Irving be? Right? This is the argument, right? I mean, one of these guys is going to be a Bucky Irving. One of these guys is going to be a Tyrone Tracy. And the guys we're talking about are like 15 pounds heavier than these guys and more explosive. It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting, which means the strategy that I keep hearing us circle is getting out of the first round in this rookie draft class and getting third rounders. Like, don't just trade the first rounder, trade back to the third.
Well, this one thing we talked about before, Matt, is that a lot of years in single QB dynasty leagues, the third round is sort of a crapshoot. It certainly will. There's not going to be as many surefire guys, but I think there's more opportunities for the third round picks to kind of return value to you.
If there was a Tracy and there was an Irving last year, we're saying that now it's like there's 4 of those guys instead of 2. You're going to double your chances at hitting on a guy like that this year with this draft class. That's the real value of this draft class, is not in Jeanty at the 101. It's in guy that lands well in round 4 and ends up taking over the job by week 3 that you drafted in the third round.
And to your argument, guys, with the Ray Garvin argument as well, put yourself in a position to take the Caleb Williams, to take the Caleb Johnson, to take the Omarion Hampton, to take the Quinshon Judkins, to take the Trevion Henderson, whoever that back is that lands. Jax, those guys with this class are going to steam into that 105 through 108 range. There's a ton of value in getting those picks, and those picks right now are not exceptionally driven up in price. Jeanty will go at the 101. We know that by the end of the process, there's going to be a quarterback or 2 that are going to push their way into it. We know Ted McMillan, if he lands inside the top 10, and then there's a couple other players who have a chance to get that elite draft capital, get pushed up. But those running backs that are going to go between picks 104 and like 110, those guys also have a ton of value. And it's sort of the Matt Kelly argument that getting in that wheelhouse, you're going to get access to running backs who might not be a 20-point per game type guy, but there's plenty of guys you could see be 15-point per game guys in that range right away. The
chat wants us to talk about Joe Milton. The chat loves Joe Milton and believes that the real value at running back could be in Joe Milton going to a number of teams. That's very possible. They saw something in Joe Milton. I mean, he's the reason why the Patriots don't have the number 1 overall pick.
Well, I'll say this, Jax, you had a great thread recently, and we talked about this. Maybe you could talk about how there's always a sort of surprise quarterback. Would Milton be in this mix of guys who right now we're not necessarily looking at as a starter, but you could see XYZ happening, and then that guy ends up gaining a ton of value?
Yeah, I went through the quarterback. Every year I do this. At the end of the year, I just take all the teams and I look at their quarterback situation, and you go through it. It's like Bills and Josh Allen. Obviously, they're pretty locked in. Patriots, Drake May, locked in. So forth. And so on.
But in Dynasty though, at the 101 in a startup, would you rather have Josh Allen or Jayden Daniels?
I tell you, Jayden is.
Give me either. Give me either, guys.
Jayden is putting himself in rarefied air. That's all I'll say.
We're having a conversation about this.
He's the best rookie quarterback of all time.
It's crazy.
I just thought continue. I wanted to make sure that we put that out there, that it's a conversation. Continue.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. But then there's a bunch of teams that are gonna need a quarterback, and I filtered it down to like the Browns, the Jets, the Steelers, the Titans, the Raiders, the Giants, the Saints. We'll see what they do with Derek Carr, and of course now the Vikings kind of they're probably not a Sam Darnold team. You can talk about them, topic for another day. But ultimately, you kind of put the quarterbacks that are left on the outside to sort of assign with those teams. And now you're looking at like Derek Carr, Sam Darnold, Cam Ward, Shador Sanders, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. And honestly, Joe Milton has to be in the sort of conversation for the guys after that. I mean, if you're put it this way, Matt, if you and I are running an NFL team, would you rather just go with Retread or go for a huge upside play with Milton and just see if he's amazing? I would definitely rather because if you crap out on Milton, there's no investment. It's fine. What did you trade, a third or fourth round pick to get a guy like that? And all of a sudden, if he's nobody, move on. But
they'll pay a lot more to have Kirk Cousins as a backup.
Right. Bingo. That's what I'm getting at. I'd much rather see what I've got in a guy like that, take a big swing. If you're the Raiders, Cousins or Milton, easy.
Yeah, but that's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
That's not how it works. That's not how it works.
That's why we would
that's
go
what
to
they
the
should do
playoffs every year if we were NFL GMs.
Why can't bridge quarterbacks be really fun bridge quarterbacks? Like why can't you go with like why does your bridge quarterback have to be a guy who sucked before? Instead, go with a bridge quarterback that's like, you're already going to lose games. You're already saying I'm using a bridge quarterback and I'm looking to get my down the line quarterback. Yeah, Jameis would be a really fun one.
They had to bench Jameis because he was too good. And the Patriots fucked up. They're letting Milton anywhere near that field.
Right.
Patriots on the flip side, though, what would be the pick to get them off of Milton? Like, somebody'd have to, like, if you're telling me hey, I'll offer you a fourth round pick, a late third round pick, he might gain more value just sitting there. You might be able to trade him for more down the line. It's a very like old school Patriots type mentality to sit on a guy there. But Milton, you could just see it like next preseason, he lights it up again and there's more and more teams interested. Somebody gets injured. The value might continue to grow because we knew he was a freak athletically. He had the highest miles per hour ever at the combine. Like the ball speed coming out of his hands, it's like a Major League Baseball pitcher that throws 100 miles per hour, and you're like, oh my God, it's Randy Johnson out there of quarterbacks, and he's got the physical size. He's super fun. So yeah, let's make bridge quarterbacks fun again. Let's no more of these Kirk Cousins, no Derek Carrs. Go get a Joe Milton.
All right, so for their career, Joe Milton more total yards and touchdowns than Anthony Richardson.
Oh.
No, I'll say no. Oof. No, because Anthony Richardson, like I've already seen it a little bit. Richardson has the rushing upside, and another team is going to take a chance on Richardson. Milton over Richardson's a tough one, guys. Tough sell.
Is it?
The mystery box versus the
I'll take what's in the box.
So good box. I'm
taking what's in the box. I'm going to go. That's a great bet because we have 10 years to hold me accountable.
Yes.
Right. That's the perfect bet. That's the perfect rhetorical trick right there. I'll do my own rhetorical trick. I got all day. I got Milton more career fantasy points than Anthony Richardson. Mark me down for that. I get write it down. Get a receipt of some kind, and I'll and then hold me accountable on social media in the chat. Make sure you hold me accountable for that. And
Lord knows I'll hold you accountable.
Please do. And speaking of accountability, we did tease Marvin Harrison Jr. talk. I know I got to get you guys out of here, but I do want to cover Marvin Harrison Jr. briefly. I posted a meme on social media of Dan Campbell crying, and I just said Marvin Harrison Jr. drafters, and people were triggered, very mad.
Of course they were.
They're very mad. Basically, I was accused of engagement farming.
Good work.
Yeah. And I was like,
Good
wow,
job.
that's quite, that was super, high intellect takedown. I was impressed. I was impressed with that big brain takedown. So Marvin Harrison Jr., 11 plus fantasy points per game, wasn't a top 12 receiver other than week 2, and yet big air yards, right? We mentioned the big 3 producers. McConkey, Neighbors, and this guy, Brian Thomas. But he was right there with those guys with air yards. So how are we valuing Marvin Harrison Jr.? Is this a guy, Theo, in your big money leagues you're actively trying to trade for?
Not necessarily, but I do think that there's something to be said where a guy like this gets overly beat up. He had 7 games with 15 points or more. He had 8 touchdown grabs. He had nearly 900 receiving yards, and people want to treat him like he's the worst. I also think that a lot of the beat up Marvin Harrison Jr. Crowd are redraft players who selected him at the 1-2 turn, who selected him as a top 15 overall selection. It's not necessarily the dynasty anger as it is the redraft anger that's sort of like trickled over. So,
by the way, that was way more indefensible of a pick, taking Marvin Harrison at the 1-2 turn in best ball, than drafting him in a rookie draft.
Yeah, and I was going to do it once, and somebody saved me because they took him 11th overall in a big money NFFC where I was holding the 12th overall pick, and I'm like, you know what? I got to chase some upside here. This will be my Marvin Harrison Jr. redraft. Some guy takes him 11, and
we ended up winning. We ended up winning the Kings Classic at the FF Expo, and one of the reasons why is we ended up saving money. I held your hand down. You're a big guy. I had to put all my weight into it.
Come on,
hold your hand down. We were both bidding on Marvin Harrison Jr. And we ended up with Jahmyr Gibbs instead.
And we had neighbors. That team was silly.
Yeah, we went neighbors and Jahmyr Gibbs instead. That worked out really well. So I can just tell you, in overall dynasty rankings on Player Profiler, we have Marvin Harrison Jr. at player number 35,
which is fun. I think that's about right. That's about right. And where
right.
we have him for wide receivers, I think is about right.
Theo, let me ask you a question. You're holding Brian Thomas Jr. A competitive team in Dynasty offers you Marvin Harrison Jr. and their 26 first for BTJ.
Well, this just turned into a Scott Connor type podcast because you're talking about tearing down to Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know, Jax. I've also said with Matt here on our bold prediction show that Brian Thomas Jr. is going to go full on peak Josh Gordon. So I'd feel like a jerk if I traded away Brian Thomas after he goes full on peak Josh Gordon as well. So I think that's sort of where we're at. And I think people are trying to tear up and tear down from Marvin Harrison Jr. I had somebody offer me their Puka Nacua for my Marvin Harrison Jr., the 110, and there was something else. It's just sitting in my inbox. I think a lot of people are trying to do that. They're trying to find interesting ways to get them. They're trying to find interesting ways to get out of them. So if you're on the Marvin Harrison Jr. train, I think this is a great time to consider buying low. And I do think that if you have him, I would be a little bit wary of trying to just straight up sell him. I think you want to do like what Jax is saying, use him as a premium asset to trade up and get an actual one that we've seen happen. So I don't know, guys. I don't want to necessarily trade the shares I have. And but I will take opportunities to buy them when it's a decent price. Is that fair?
Can you buy with like a couple of seconds plus Jaylen Waddle? Like, I mean, how crazy is the market? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know where the market is. Like, I look at it trading up, trading down, getting off them, trading into them. I mean, the first plus Marvin for, some of these guys is an interesting trade, like the Puka form. I mean, I still lean to the side without the first, which is crazy, is the sort of the point, right? The fact that we would actually think that Marvin Harrison Jr. plus a first doesn't get us any wide receiver. If I said that to you, at the beginning of last year when he was basically, we thought, remember we had the conversation that he was probably going to crash the God tier. Remember that, Theo? That it was he was the number one guy that crashed the God tier. He did not crash the God tier. As a matter of fact, that person was Brian Thomas Jr. Crazy.
Actually, the God, it's interesting. Brian Thomas Jr. and Neighbors and Thomas Jr. have kind of crashed that God tier. But it's been trying to determine the guy who cracks the God tier has been sort of a fruitless endeavor for sort of 2 years in a row. 2 years ago, we were talking about it. It ended up being CeeDee Lamb. He ends up cracking the God tier. This past year, it's Thomas Jr. And then certainly Neighbors is a guy we were open to doing it. But yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's definitely sort of an enigma here. I don't know the exact pick I would take to re-roll him. I actually haven't really thought about it that much until Matt sent this show sheet over. And then right about the same time Matt sent the show sheet, I had this offer in my inbox. So I don't know. It's an interesting profile, an interesting one. I don't think he's bad. I don't think Kyler Murray certainly elevated him at all. I don't think the way they used him was beneficial to him at all. I think that we talked about in the pre-show, guys, he was sort of the quote-unquote sacrificial X, where he was doing a lot of cardio routes. Matt brought up the air yard share. They've got to look back in the offseason and figure out a way to get consistent production out of him. Last year, another Ohio State wide receiver had struggles in a very different way, but JSN certainly, Matt, gained a ton of value this year that was lost as a rookie. Maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. follows that same path. It's a really tough one to gauge right now, but I do think where we have him ranked,
you have these comparison points with players that Marvin Harrison Jr. played with in college and produced similar numbers to or outproduced them at an earlier age. And then they go on to be Garrett Wilson, and they go on to be Jackson Smith-Njigba this year. And as a rookie, yes, he had the draft capital. Yes, they were going to play him. Like you see the snaps, 79% snap share. He put up 116 targets, top 25 in the league. Not exceptional, not bad. Top 10 in air yards and number 6 overall among NFL wide receivers in air yard share. 42.3% of the air yard share. 26 deep targets. You don't throw the ball up just because the guy's there, right? NFL quarterbacks, even Kyler Murray, are well-trained at this point. Like, it's not the same game as it was in 1988, right? They are trained not to throw the ball up where it can be intercepted. And yet, for whatever reason, even on those targets, they could not connect. 68% of his targets were catchable. That was number 70 in the NFL among qualified wide receivers. So it's just really bad luck that the targets were not catchable, especially the deeper targets. The deeper targets were a lot less catchable than the short targets, which, basically, suppressed his yardage production, even though the air yards were top 10 in the league. So all he needs is one of these two things to break his way next year. Either the targets are more accurate, or he goes up against fewer killers at the cornerback position. He just happened to draw very poorly with the corners that were playing against him, and they could shadow him because the other receiver was Michael Wilson. So there wasn't another guy in the field holding the secondary accountable other than the tight end in Trey McBride. So for a lot of reasons, this guy was like, hey, I'm out here on an island against the best each NFL defensive secondary has to throw at us, and Kyler has decided that he's going to be airmailing me most of the time. It's tough. It's a tough situation. So you can go from fading a player. I was generally down on Marvin Harrison Jr. last year. I mean, my analysis doesn't just drive the rankings. Like, our rankings are much more scientific than that. But I was, preferring Neighbors clearly, and at cost, certainly a guy like McConkey, I preferred. This year, I think I can be right 2 years in a row on Harrison. Fade him in 2024 and be bullish in 2025.
I think that's right.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.